Everybody, is Jordan.
And it's Chrissy.
And you are watching
Baggage Claim. But when I think about police consisting of both black and white police, I'm afraid. And so I'm afraid even if I didn't do anything wrong, I'm gonna be in trouble. There's a level of privilege in knowing that you don't have to necessarily be afraid to call the people who were here to protect you. I remember being in class, I would always hear from my teachers that, you know, you need to learn this, otherwise you're gonna go to jail. My white friends had never heard that before. They were like, what? Jail? Why did she say jail? Right. And I'm like, I don't know. And then later on, I was like, wow, I don't think I worked so hard in school just because I wanted to do great. I didn't want to go to jail. There are some times where teachers don't mean anything by the things that they say. You know, they're like, I'm really trying to prevent something. But, you know, they have statistics that even back people that look like me being found in those places, and those are different abuses of power, or for that matter, privilege. Being able to give specific examples does help to just kind of like open up a child's mind, and I mean open up a child's mind, because one thing that I will say I know about kids, and I don't have children of my own, but I mean, I have my nephews that, you know, I help my sister with. And so I've also experienced a lot of things that they have gone through. And kids, we don't give them enough credit sometimes. We just don't give them enough credit, because I think we try to be overly protective and say all of the right things and better prepare them. And so sometimes we end up over preparing them. Yeah. You know, and the reason why I say that is because I've seen this from both sides of the spectrum. So I've seen like some, well, having the conversation about white privilege, we would think that I need to tell them every single thing about everything, and you know, therefore they'll know to be extra sensitive to their black friend, and that's exactly what they do.
That's exactly what happens. Extra sensitive
to their black friend, and then, you know, in turn that's perceived from the black friend as you different, 3/5 of a human. You know, you're different.
You are automatically less than.
And in the black community, the over preparation looks like, I remember growing up and I heard from my grandmothers, and it was passed down that you're just different. You think you want to go on news, you better not wear your hair like that. You know, you need to get a perm right now. It's a level of this that happens on both sides of the spectrum.
And that kind of actually makes me think of just when I hear stuff like this, and I'm not trying to like overshadow what you're saying, but it makes me think of when I was growing up, hearing the way my mom talked about her body, you know, and when she talks about, oh, I'm so fat, now I look at myself and I look just like she did 20 years ago, so now I'm thinking, oh, I'm so fat. So thinking about that, you know, like your parents having grown up in the era they did, that's what they knew, and so they said, do this, you're going to jail. Do this, you're not going to be on the news, you know, so that's just, it's things that, like you were saying, kids, we overlook tiny humans. And tiny humans are just sponges. When you tell them stuff, you don't even have to tell them stuff. When you do stuff in front of them, it soaks
model behavior. That's exactly what I wanted to say. Like, that was the point of the kids. That was the point. Yeah. Because the kids, like, they literally do that model behavior. So how do we help? We be the change we want to see. That's how we help.
Which means that we have to step outside of ourselves, and as adults, like we said earlier, go and have a conversation with a black person, or you know, do that so that you can actually tell your kids how to do it themselves.
Because kids don't see color. I mean, most of the time, like, they don't see color and major differences. I mean, like, of course they might know, oh, my skin color looks different from yours, but like they don't think about that until we begin.
And what I think should happen is they need to know what it means. I think that's why we're in the predicament that we're in, because nobody knows until something happens, and it's like, oh, now I know.
And I would say, like, something that I've been confronting personally is that, like, we all have implicit bias.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of that is generational and it is inherited. And, like, I think that whenever we can become agents for change. Like the first thing that we need to do is look inward. And anybody who thinks that that's one quick look is a fool. I think the biggest thing that I remember from like my high school years that was race related was like we had 4 local high schools and there wasn't enough public funding to justify keeping all of those high schools open. My high school being the biggest, it was, okay, we're going to reroute bus routes and all the kids are going to come to our school.
Right.
We had black people in my school, but like there was a predominantly black school out in the outskirts
that wasn't receiving the funding.
And none of the schools were truly as much as we were because we had the bigger population. So they bust them all in. But that was an issue that like was highly controversial in our area. It was like, we don't want our kids going to school with black kids to the point where there are yard signs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like,
a lot of being black has been what you have isn't good enough. The white person's is better. And so, whereas you see these neighborhoods where the schools are not receiving the funding and they're slowly being moved into the white areas. I'm from Baton Rouge, and there has been a lot of that going on for years where the hospitals are taken out of the black majority of Baton Rouge and placed so far away to where, I mean, if an emergency happened, then what's the likelihood that you'll survive or you get the healthcare that you need? It's just been a lot of the black is not enough. We have to slowly move into what is accepted by the white culture.
People have to be willing to go there to say, like, I'm just going to address people that identify as Christians because I think that is what I know and I'm comfortable in right now, saying that, like, we have a picture of who Jesus is, who stood up for the oppressed and whatever that looked like, homeless, someone from a different ethnicity. I think that's something that we can do easily instead of like clinging to who the person of Jesus is and what he represented. He had righteous anger. I see a lot of people saying, I don't understand the riot. I'm like, okay, and I think about that as my initial reaction too, but it's like, Jesus was so mad over injustice that he went to the temples and flipped some tables. So I don't know. It's not a conversation that I'm very well versed in, and there's still so much learning and growing to do. The people who matter the most are the people that we're responsible to and for. And as your friend, like, I'm responsible to care about the well-being of like your heart, and that's not a burden. That's a privilege and a gift. And I think that like trust is built. I was thinking about this on the way over here. I was like, wow, how did me and Jordan even get here? Like, Chrissy, I'm like, oh, well, it's probably when I was crying on the floor of my office. And my friend Chrissy turned around and was like, I got you, boo. I'm going to draw the blinds and we'll lock the door. We're about to get in this thing. And it starts with...
Lock the door in a minute.
Yeah, but it starts with that trust. Like, I think like it's easier to have conversations with people that you have actually invested into personally and that you've shown, like, I trust you. I'm going to lock the door. Like, I'm going to try to educate you in these situations when you're asking questions about the black community, and like, that doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with everything that you say, Caroline, but like, I'm going to create a safe environment. I'm going to close the door. I'm going to not... Oh, this makes me so mad. You're in a conversation with somebody and they're on their phone and it's like they're halfway listening. Like in those conversations when we talked about race in the office, it was like laptops up, phones up, like, let's get in it. And I never felt like pitted against anybody. It was like, wow. And I remember leaving that conversation and being like, I'm so thankful that I have friends of color from predominantly my workplace, because I don't mingle in a lot of circles that are culturally diverse, and I think that is a part of systemic racism. But like, I think that also leads me to this question, and I think that we've talked about this before. Is like, I would love to go sit in on a young adult service at a church that you guys attend, and like, you know, I think that would put me in an uncomfortable position. But I feel like I need people of color to be my teachers, and I know not every person of color is like, oh, let me teach you, because that's not everybody's place.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that gifting.
Yeah.
As far as church is concerned, modern day, it has been what the blacks have known to be church is not enough.
What do you mean by that?
The Help Me Jesus songs or Don't Know How But You Did It songs in the black culture isn't enough.
It's good
it's good for a time, but now it's the God, you are the mountain, da 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 da, wash my feet, you are the scum between my toes type of songs. Yes. All the black people knew God to be was this person to rescue me from this hurt, harm, and danger that I've been receiving all these years. And so here it is 2020, and it's like, God, I need you to help me through this hurt, harm, and danger, and I need you to bring me out. Like, all we know is struggle. I need you to bring me out, and that's all we see God as. And the white people have always been on this side of it, and it's like, okay, well, we see this grace and this mercy and all of this good stuff and these blessings and prosperity, and the black person is like, I got a hoop there. I'm on Section 8. What you talking about? Prosperity and blessings. You know what I'm saying? And so we've been challenged as a black culture, one, to not view God as this angry God.
Like Massa.
Like Massa.
Like slave master.
We've been challenged to not
kind of like
do
you
that.
bow, you reverence him in this way. Don't look up too much, or you better make sure you're on your knees when you pray to him.
Yeah.
Or don't tell him what you want, Lord, whatever it is that you would give me that I would have. Right. And that's kind of like
it's been the extreme though. It's like, okay, all that y'all been doing is wrong. Y'all need some uplights, y'all need some smoke, y'all need some music that's gonna make you cry. Like, y'all need all this peaceful stuff. Y'all need kids worshiping at the altar. Y'all don't need to be in no pews. Y'all need the chairs. Your pastors don't need to sit on the stage. They need to sit in the congregation. And so, like, all of this that the black church has built by themselves, because they built the church. And so all of what was known to be the black church is like, all of that's wrong. Y'all need to do this. Wow. And so we're trying to find the balance of what we're needing to find the balance of, okay, what can we take from the white church to make this even balance.
What you were saying though about like God bring me out of this, it really made me think of like the Egyptians and the Jews. Like that's what God did. Thousands and thousands of years ago. Like that's what he did.
Right.
And it's almost like we're in that now. Like how how did we get here?
Yeah. Because it is like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's because things like that they're still existent, but of course they look different, and I think that like when I was hearing even Jordan begin to talk about kind of the differences between white church, black church, and that's just how we call it. But like how now it's like we need to be singing a new song, one that's going to like help us through the current times, but we don't know the language almost. And so it's like, how do you tell God, like, become extremely intimate with God and let him know what you're in right now.
Right.
It requires you doing more than just hooping and screaming. And, it requires a little bit more to that because and then allowing him access in, like really allowing him access in, so that's a level of vulnerability that comes with that as well. But vulnerability is seen in the black community by a large majority of people as weakness. And so the idea of becoming weak means that we can't handle our situations, but in turn, and I think we're kind of coming into the realization that as we weaken, he strengthens. Wow. And knowing that he is stronger, he's always strong, that he's going to be able to cover us. So there's no need for us to continue to try to look strong and appear strong, in every facet of life. He's slowly beginning to release us from that, or he's always wanted to, but release a community from feeling like you have to be in control and you have to do all these things on your own, he's always been there.
And that's what I'm glad you said control, because another part of the Black culture is like, I don't want to be vulnerable, because when I do decide to be vulnerable with a person, I don't really know if I can trust them, and then I lose control, and now I have to start from scratch. And so it's like we've been starting from scratch the whole time, and I don't want to do that again. So in order for me to stay strong, I have to keep myself to myself. You know what I'm saying? And I have to appear strong even when I'm not.
So my mom and I had a conversation the other day how it feels like, especially working in the mental health, field that we do, feels like so much of what's going on stems from mental health and a lack of awareness, so like you were saying, the Black community, when we're weak and we ask for help, we're seen as weak, so we're not going to ask for help, and I've heard in the office, y'all, other people talking about that as well, but from the other side of that, and not trying to defend horrible negative things that have happened, but there are so many police, forces that also don't have the mental health resources that they need. More so than that, but even like the government. I bet half the government should all be on some kind of medication or in therapy.
Right.
Absolutely.
But it's something that for so long we've just criticized, and not even 50 years ago, if you were autistic or you had Downs, you were just put in a home and forgot about.
Exactly.
Right? And
Absolutely.
so now these things are just coming up so often, and the depression and the anxiety, and the anxiety about your skin color, and the feeling sad that your color is different than other people, right? So how can we advocate for that as well? We should be advocating not only for the Black community, but mental health just in general, right?
Yeah,
wow, that's
I
a good
agree.
human resource question
I agree.
for every company.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to go. That's my dream. Is to make every human resources responsible.
Yes.
Yes.
You should be responsible for the mental health of your employees.
I think we're driven by productivity in general, and so like every company, I'm sure, it's all about the numbers, and it's like even with police, it's like, let's get them in training, let's get them out so they can get on the road or whatever like that, and it's like, but you've forgotten about the mind. What if they're not mentally prepared to go out here and see something? The stuff that policemen see is traumatic. Like,
it is.
And if there is no therapy for that, then it's like they're just going, and it's like being sick and not going to the doctor. It's going to fester.
I have a friend that was a police officer, and he has horrible PTSD from seeing people get killed, and just
definitely,
so how are we advocating for that as well, and how can, in that same grain, how can we hold police officers responsible? How do we advocate for the police force or the firefighting force, or guards or whatever? How do we advocate for them to have mental health resources, like places like us? Like we have a great,
phenomenal healthcare package.
So how do we advocate and encourage that?
So I've been seeing some things recently, like having social workers go out with police officers, like for non-violent calls, but for those calls that they get that a social worker may be able to assist with, to kind of de-escalate a situation, beforehand, and add their expertise. I love that idea. In any particular career or whatever we're using it for, it's going to require them to be willing to not know, and that's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging to be a police officer, and you've policed for years, and then you bring in somebody, and I mean, just imagine, I mean, I played sports before, you've probably been in clubs or anything before, and you kind of come in and, you've been here, you paid your dues, and then new kid on the block comes, rookie comes in, and what? All of a sudden, what are you doing? Offering this fresh new perspective, and you're like, I appreciate this, but serve your time, Ricky. No, I mean, but I mean, in all seriousness, I bet it may be uncomfortable. I just say that to say that I'm pretty sure that will be a little uncomfortable. But I think that's the extent of uncomfortability that we need to be willing to go for. But I think